My name is Robert, and I'm 68 years old. For 30 years, I thought I knew what unconditional love meant. I thought I understood the bond between a father and son. I was wrong, because in just 18 months, I watched that bond, built over 3 decades of love, sacrifice, and shared dreams, crumble like dust in the wind. But this isn't just a story about loss. This is a story about patience, about wisdom, and about how sometimes the universe has its own way of delivering justice when you least expect it. Let me take you back to where it all began, because every betrayal starts with trust, and every revenge begins with love. Before we deep dive in story, please subscribe to the channel and comment where you're listening from. My son Michael was born when I was 25. From the moment I held him in the hospital, I knew my life had changed forever. His mother, my first wife Sarah, died when he was only 8 years old. Cancer took her, and it nearly took me too. But I had Michael, and he had me. Those were tough years, friends. Raising a boy alone while building my construction business from nothing. I'd wake up at 4 a.m., make his breakfast, drop him at school, work 12-hour days, then come home to help with homework, cook dinner, and tuck him into bed. Weekends weren't for rest. They were for little league games, fishing trips, and teaching him how to swing a hammer. I never remarried. Oh, I dated a few women over the years, but Michael was my priority. Every decision I made was about giving him the life his mother would have wanted. The best schools, college fund, family vacations we could barely afford. I wanted him to have everything I never had. Michael grew into an incredible young man. Honor roll student, college graduate, respectful, kind-hearted. We were best friends. Every Sunday, we'd have dinner together. Every major decision in his life, he'd ask for my advice. When he started working at my company after college, I thought I was the luckiest father alive. "Dad," he'd say, "when I have kids someday, I want to be exactly like you." Those words, they were everything to me. Then, at 28, Michael met Rebecca. Rebecca was beautiful, I'll give her that. Blonde, well-dressed, spoke with a polished accent that made you think she came for money. She was 26, worked in marketing, and seemed sweet enough at first. When Michael brought her to Sunday dinner for the first time, she was all smiles and compliments. "Mr. Patterson, this roast is incredible. And Michael talks about you constantly. You're like his hero." I wanted to like her. I really did. Michael was glowing with happiness, and after all those years of putting his needs first, I thought he deserved to find love. But something felt off. Maybe it was the way her smile never quite reached her eyes. Maybe it was how she'd squeeze Michael's hand a little too tight when he was talking about our business plans. Or maybe it was just a father's intuition. The first red flag came 3 months into their relationship. Michael and I were discussing expanding the company, maybe opening a second location. We'd been planning this for years. But suddenly, Michael seemed hesitant. "Dad, Rebecca thinks maybe we're moving too fast," he said. "She's got some good points about market saturation and startup costs." I was puzzled. "Son, what does Rebecca know about construction?" "She's got business experience, Dad. MBA from a good school. Maybe we should listen to her perspective." That was the beginning. Subtle at first, just little suggestions, little doubts planted in Michael's mind. Rebecca never criticized me directly. She was too smart for that. Instead, she'd ask innocent questions that made Michael second-guess things. "Honey, don't you think your dad works you too hard? You deserve better work-life balance." "Michael, are you sure the company finances are as good as your dad says? Maybe you should ask to see the books." "Sweetie, your dad means well, but he's from a different generation. Business has changed." Within 6 months, Michael was pulling back. Our Sunday dinners became every other week. Then once a month, he stopped asking for my advice and started presenting Rebecca's opinions as his own insights. I bit my tongue. I told myself this was normal. Young couples needed space to grow. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Michael proposed to Rebecca after a year of dating. I should have been thrilled, but instead, I felt a cold dread in my stomach. The engagement period was when Rebecca really showed her true colors, but only to me. In front of Michael, she was still the sweet, supportive fiancée. But when he wasn't around, the mask slipped. "Robert," she said to me one day. "Notice she stopped calling me Mr. Patterson. I think it's time you started treating Michael like the adult he is. He doesn't need Daddy making all his decisions anymore." "I don't make his decisions, Rebecca. I just offer advice when he asks." She smiled that cold smile. "Well, he won't be asking much longer." She was right. Michael started making changes at work without consulting me. Decisions about our projects, our employees, our future. When I tried to discuss it with him, he'd get defensive. "Dad, I'm 30 years old. I can handle business decisions. Rebecca thinks you don't trust me." "Son, it's not about trust. We're partners. We discuss things. That's how we've always worked." "Well, maybe it's time we changed how we work." The wedding was beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. As I walked Michael down the aisle, his mother wasn't there to do it. I whispered, "I'm proud of you, son. Your mom would be too." He squeezed my shoulder. "Thanks, Dad. I love you." For a moment, it felt like the old Michael was still there. But during the reception, I watched Rebecca work the room, charming everyone, especially my sister Margaret and my brother Tom. She had a gift for making people feel special while subtly gathering information about our family, our business, our assets. After the honeymoon, things got worse. Much worse. Rebecca convinced Michael they needed their own place. Not the apartment he'd been renting, but a house. A big house. "We need space to start our family," she said. The down payment came from Michael's savings, money I'd helped him accumulate over the years. Then came the business changes. Rebecca had ideas for improving the company. Modern marketing, updated systems, new client relationships. All good ideas on paper, but every suggestion somehow reduced my role in the company my son and I had built together. "Dad, we should separate our responsibilities more clearly," Michael announced one Monday morning. "I'll handle client relations and business development. You focus on the hands-on construction work." It was like being demoted in my own company. But worse was coming. The real devastation began when Rebecca got pregnant. I was overjoyed my first grandchild. But Rebecca used the pregnancy as a weapon. "The construction site is too dangerous for me to visit now," she'd say. "And Michael, all that dust and noise can't be good for the baby. Maybe you should work from home more." Gradually, Michael stopped coming to job sites. He'd work from their house, handling paperwork and calls while I managed everything else. Our connection, built on working side by side, was severed. When little Emma was born, I fell in love again. This tiny, perfect baby who looked just like Michael did 30 years earlier. I wanted to be the grandfather I dreamed of being, the one who'd teach her to fish, help with homework, spoil her with love, like I'd done for her father. But Rebecca had other plans. "Robert, I know you're excited, but newborns need routine. We can't have too many visitors disrupting Emma's schedule." My visits became scheduled, limited, supervised. Rebecca would hover, timing every interaction, cutting visits short if Emma fussed even slightly. "She needs to bond with her parents first," Rebecca would explain to Michael when I wasn't around. "Too many caregivers can confuse babies." Michael, exhausted from new parenthood and work stress, just nodded along. He trusted his wife to know about babies. Why wouldn't he? The worst part was watching Rebecca rewrite history. She'd tell people how Michael was finally free to run the business his way, and how some fathers have trouble letting go. She painted me as an overbearing father who couldn't accept his son's independence. When I tried to address this with Michael directly, he'd get angry. "Dad, why can't you just be happy for us? Rebecca's not trying to keep you away. She's just protecting our family. Maybe if you made more effort to understand her perspective." Understand her perspective? I'd been trying for 2 years. But how do you fight poison that's been dripped slowly into someone's mind? How do you prove manipulation to someone who's being manipulated? The killing blow came on Emma's second birthday. I'd been looking forward to this party for weeks, had bought her a beautiful wooden playhouse I'd built myself in my garage. It was painted pink and white, with little flower boxes and a working door, the kind of thing every grandfather dreams of making for their grandchild. When I arrived at their house, there were cars everywhere. A big party, lots of people I didn't recognize. I carried the playhouse to the backyard, expecting to see Emma's face light up. Instead, I found Rebecca hosting what looked like a business networking event. She was introducing Michael to potential investors, people who might want to buy into our construction company. Our company, the one I'd built from nothing. Michael. I pulled him aside. What's all this? He looked uncomfortable. Dad, Rebecca thinks we should explore opportunities to expand. Maybe bring in some partners with capital. Partners? Son, we don't need partners. Business is good. We're profitable. But we could be more profitable. Rebecca's done the analysis. These people could help us grow faster. I felt the ground shifting under my feet. Grow faster? Michael, we've been growing steadily for 20 years. This is our family business. Rebecca appeared at his elbow like she'd been listening. Robert, Michael and I have been talking. Maybe it's time you considered retirement. You've worked so hard for so long. You deserve to relax. The words hung in the air like smoke. Retirement. From the company I'd built. The company I'd planned to pass to my son, not sell to strangers. I'm 64, Rebecca. I'm not ready to retire. But think about it, she pressed on. You could travel, enjoy your golden years. Michael and I could buy out your share of the company. You'd have financial security for life. Buy out my share. With what money? The company was my life's work, my legacy for Michael and Emma. And they wanted to give it to strangers. That night, after all the guests left, I tried one more time to reach my son. Michael, this business was supposed to be your inheritance. Our legacy for Emma. Why would you want to sell it? He looked tired, conflicted. Dad, Rebecca thinks we could make more money faster. Emma's college fund, our mortgage, her future. We need to think bigger. Son, this company can provide all of that. We've done fine for 20 years. But have we? Really? Rebecca's voice had crept into his words. Dad, you've always been conservative with money. Maybe too conservative. Rebecca has shown me projections, possibilities I never considered. That's when I realized I'd already lost him. The son who used to ask my advice about everything now saw me as an obstacle to overcome. The next 6 months were the darkest of my life. Michael stopped coming to work regularly. He'd send emails with decisions he'd made, without consulting me. Rebecca's investor friends started showing up at job sites, asking questions, taking measurements, evaluating our assets. My own son was preparing to sell our company out from under me. The final confrontation came on a rainy Tuesday in March. Michael asked me to meet him at the office after hours. I thought maybe he'd come to his senses, that we were finally going to talk honestly. Instead, I found him with a lawyer and a stack of papers. Dad, we need to discuss your future with the company. My future. In the company I'd built. The lawyer explained that Michael and Rebecca were offering to buy out my 50% stake for what they called fair market value. The number was insulting, barely enough to cover a modest retirement, nowhere near what the company was actually worth. Son, I said quietly, this business is worth 3 times what you're offering. The evaluation was done by professionals, Dad. This is a fair price. Fair. Michael, I've put 40 years of my life into this company. I built it for you, for Emma's future. And you want to sell it to strangers for quick cash. Rebecca's influence was clear in his response. Dad, you can't hold onto the past forever. Business evolves. I need to make decisions based on what's best for my family now. His family. Not our family. His and Rebecca's family. And what about me? I asked. What about what I've sacrificed for this business? For you, you'll be taken care of. The buyout will give you enough to live comfortably. live comfortably, like a pensioner put out to pasture. I looked at my son, this man I'd raised, loved, sacrificed everything for, and I didn't recognize him anymore. Where was the boy who used to say he wanted to be exactly like me? Where was the young man who called me his hero? I need time to think about this, I said. Dad, the investors need an answer by Friday. This is a limited-time opportunity. Limited-time opportunity. Rebecca's words coming from Michael's mouth. I walked out of that office, feeling like I'd already died. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd built for my son, was being sold to the highest bidder by the very person I'd built it for. I didn't sleep for 3 days. I barely ate. My sister Margaret called, worried about me, but I couldn't explain what was happening without sounding like a bitter old man who couldn't let go. Maybe Rebecca was right. Maybe I was just an old man who couldn't adapt to change. That's when the universe decided to intervene. It was Margaret who unwittingly started Rebecca's downfall. My sister had always been good with people, had a way of making everyone feel comfortable and chatty. She'd stayed in touch with Rebecca after the wedding, occasionally meeting for lunch, playing the supportive aunt role. Margaret called me on Thursday morning, the day before I had to give Michael my answer about the buyout. Robert, I need to talk to you about something. Can you come over? I'd been dreading this conversation, thinking she was going to lecture me about accepting change and letting Michael live his own life. Instead, she had information that would change everything. Rebecca's been asking me a lot of questions lately, Margaret began. About Dad's estate, about the family property in Vermont, about your finances. At first, I thought she was just trying to understand family history, but yesterday she asked something that made me uncomfortable. What kind of something? She wanted to know if you'd written a will, and specifically whether Michael was your primary beneficiary. When I said I assumed he was, she asked about timelines, like how long probate takes, whether assets would be tied up if something happened to you. The blood in my veins turned to ice. She asked about what happens if something happens to me. Robert, it gets worse. She also asked about your health, whether you'd had any recent doctor visits, if you were on any medications. She said she was concerned about you, but the way she asked, it felt calculating. I sat in Margaret's kitchen, pieces of a horrible puzzle clicking into place. Rebecca wasn't just trying to get me out of the business. She was planning for my death. But Margaret wasn't finished. There's more. You know my friend Linda, the one who works at First National Bank? She mentioned seeing Rebecca there last week, asking questions about estate planning and inheritance procedures. Linda thought it was odd because Rebecca claimed to be asking for a friend, but she was asking very specific questions about your accounts. My accounts. Rebecca had been researching my personal finances. Margaret, are you sure about this? Linda was concerned enough to mention it. She said Rebecca seemed to know details about your banking that she shouldn't know unless someone with access to my financial information told her. Michael, my son had access to our business accounts, and he'd obviously share that information with his wife. Information Rebecca was using to plan for my death. That evening, I did something I never thought I'd have to do. I hired a private investigator. I need to know everything about Rebecca Patterson, I told him. Her background, her finances, her previous relationships, everything. 3 days later, I had my answer, and it was worse than I'd imagined. Rebecca Miller, that was her real last name, was not who she claimed to be. The private investigator's report read like a criminal profile. She had been married twice before. Her first husband, David, was a successful accountant 15 years older than her. Their marriage lasted 3 years, ending when David discovered Rebecca had been slowly draining their joint accounts and had taken out credit cards in his name. The divorce was ugly, but David was so traumatized he didn't press charges. Her second husband, James, was a widower with 2 teenage children and a thriving restaurant business. That marriage lasted only 2 years. James died in what was ruled an accidental fall down his basement stairs. Rebecca inherited everything, then immediately sold the restaurant and moved to our city. James's children contested the will, claiming Rebecca had isolated their father from family and friends in the months before his death. But they couldn't prove anything. The pattern was clear. Rebecca targeted older men with assets, married them, isolated them from family, then waited for opportunity, either to drain their accounts or inherit everything. But there was more. The investigator had found Rebecca's real financial situation. She was broke, deep in debt from credit cards and bad investments. The house she and Michael were living in? She'd convinced him to put it entirely in her name for tax purposes, then had taken out a second mortgage without telling him. Michael thought they were financially stable because Rebecca managed all their accounts. In reality, they were months away from bankruptcy, and she'd been using his credit to keep them afloat. The business investors she'd introduced him to? They were associates of hers from previous schemes. The plan was to convince Michael to sell the company, use his name and reputation to secure the sale, then disappear with the money, leaving Michael holding worthless contracts and legal liability. My son wasn't just being manipulated. He was being set up to take the fall for Rebecca's crimes while she vanished with everything we'd built. I had 48 hours before the investor meeting that would destroy Michael's life. I could go to him with this information, but would he believe me? Rebecca had spent 3 years convincing him I was a jealous, controlling father who resented his success. He'd think I'd fabricated everything. No, I needed a different approach. I needed Rebecca to expose herself. I've been in construction for 40 years. You don't survive in this business without learning how to handle difficult people, how to outmaneuver competitors, and how to protect what's yours. Rebecca thought she was dealing with a naive old man. She was about to discover her mistake. First, I called my lawyer and accountant. I restructured my assets, moved money into accounts Rebecca couldn't possibly know about, and set up legal protections for the business that would prevent any sale without my explicit consent. Next, I contacted the legitimate construction companies Rebecca's investors were supposedly representing. None of them had heard of Rebecca Miller or any deal involving our company. Her investors were frauds, just as I suspected. But most importantly, I reached out to David and James's children, Rebecca's previous victims. They were eager to help stop her from destroying another family. The plan was simple but required perfect timing. I would attend the investor meeting as expected, appearing to reluctantly agree to the sale. But I'd be wearing a wire provided by the private investigator, and Rebecca's previous victims would be present to confirm her identity at the crucial moment. I called Michael on Friday morning. "Son, I've thought about your offer. Let's meet with these investors. Maybe it's time for this old man to step aside." I could hear the relief in his voice. "Dad, I'm so glad. Rebecca will be thrilled. This is going to be great for all of us." That afternoon, I sat in our company conference room, watching Rebecca orchestrate what she thought would be my final humiliation. She was radiant, confident, playing the role of the supportive daughter-in-law, helping her husband secure his future. Michael looked nervous but excited. He kept glancing at me, probably worried I'd change my mind. If only he knew I was about to save his life. The fake investors laid out their proposal: a quick sale, cash payment, immediate transfer of assets, everything designed to move money fast and leave no trail. Rebecca nodded along, occasionally adding details about our company's undervalued potential. "Mr. Patterson," one of the fake investors said to me, "your son's wife has been very helpful in explaining your business operations. She clearly has a keen understanding of your assets." Indeed she did. Too keen. That's when I gave the signal. The conference room door opened, and in walked David, Rebecca's first husband, followed by James's daughter Sarah, and Detective Martinez from the fraud division. Rebecca's face went white as she recognized David. For the first time in 3 years, I saw real emotion from her, pure terror. "Hello, Rebecca," David said quietly. "Or should I say, hello, Rebecca Miller? I've been looking for you." Michael looked confused. "Dad, what's going on? Who are these people?" Detective Martinez stepped forward, badge visible. "Mrs. Patterson, We need to talk to you about some financial irregularities that have come to our attention." Rebecca tried to run, literally tried to run from the room, but the detective was ready for that. As they restrained her, she started screaming at Michael. "This is your father's fault. He set this up. He can't stand that you chose me over him." Even then, she was trying to manipulate him, trying to make him believe this was about jealousy instead of justice. But David had brought documentation, bank records showing how Rebecca had drained their accounts. Sarah had the investigation files from her father's death. The detective had evidence of the credit fraud, the fake investors, the mortgage scam on Michael's house. As the truth poured out, I watched my son's world crumble. Every lie, every manipulation, every plan Rebecca had made to destroy our family and steal our assets, it all came to light in that conference room. The fake investors, realizing the setup was blown, tried to leave quietly, but the detective had officers waiting outside. Rebecca's entire network was rounded up in one coordinated operation. Michael just sat there, stunned, as his wife was arrested for fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. The woman he'd loved, the woman he'd chosen over his own father, was being led away in handcuffs, screaming threats and curses that revealed her true nature to everyone. "Dad," he whispered, "how did you know?" "Son," I said gently, "I've been protecting you your whole life. I wasn't going to stop now." The legal aftermath took months. Rebecca was charged with multiple counts of fraud and conspiracy. The investigation revealed she'd stolen over $300,000 from Michael through various schemes, credit cards, the second mortgage, fake business expenses. Money he'd thought was going toward their future was actually funding her debts and escape plan. Michael lost the house, of course. Everything Rebecca had put in her name was seized as evidence or claimed by creditors. My son, who'd thought he was building wealth, discovered he was actually financially ruined. But the money wasn't the hardest part for him. The hardest part was accepting that the woman he'd loved, the mother of his child, had never loved him at all. He was just another mark, another victim in her pattern of targeting vulnerable men. "Dad," he said to me one evening as we sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where we'd shared so many Sunday dinners, "how could I have been so blind? How could I have chosen her over you?" It would have been easy to say, "I told you so." Easy to remind him of all the warnings he'd ignored, all the times he defended her against my concerns. But what good would that do? "Son," I said instead, "she was good at what she did. She knew exactly how to manipulate someone with a good heart. Your mistake wasn't trusting her. It was not trusting yourself and not trusting us." Rebuilding our relationship wasn't simple. 3 years of poison doesn't disappear overnight. Michael had to face the fact that he'd almost destroyed everything his mother and I had built. He'd almost sold his daughter's inheritance to criminals. He'd almost lost his father forever. But we're both stubborn men, and we're both committed to family. Slowly, carefully, we started working together again. Michael moved in with me temporarily while sorting out his finances. Little Emma, now 3 years old, got to spend real time with her grandfather, watching her play in my backyard, building sandcastles and chasing butterflies. I realized Rebecca had stolen 3 years of my granddaughter's life from me. 3 years of bedtime stories, birthday parties, and grandfather hugs. That, more than any money, was the damage I could never forgive. Rebecca was sentenced to 8 years in prison. The evidence was overwhelming, not just from our case, but from David and James's family as well. The pattern of fraud and manipulation going back a decade made it clear she was a career criminal. But the real justice wasn't her prison sentence. The real justice was watching my family heal. Michael threw himself into rebuilding our business and our relationship. He worked harder than ever, determined to prove he could be trusted again. More importantly, he became the father to Emma that I'd been to him, present, devoted, protective. "Dad," he said to me 6 months after Rebecca's sentencing, "I want Emma to have what I had growing up. I want her to know she's loved, protected, and that family comes first." We instituted new Sunday dinners. Every week, without fail, Michael, Emma, and I share a meal and talk about our week. Emma helps me in the garden, and I'm teaching her to use tools in my workshop, carefully supervised, of course. She calls me Grandpa Bob, and she lights up my world in ways I thought I'd lost forever. The business is stronger than ever. Michael's experience with Rebecca, painful as it was, taught him valuable lessons about reading people and protecting assets. We've implemented better financial controls and legal protections. We'll never be that vulnerable again. Last month, Michael started dating again, a teacher from Emma's school named Linda. She's kind, genuine, and most importantly, she loves Emma like her own daughter. But this time, Michael's taking it slow. He's learned to trust his instincts and to value his family's opinions. Dad, he told me recently, I want you to really get to know Linda before we get serious. Your judgment about people, it's better than mine. People ask me if I'm angry about those lost years, about what Rebecca stole from our family. The truth is, I was angry for a long time. Angry at her, angry at Michael, angry at myself for not stopping it sooner. But anger is like carrying a hot coal. You're the one who gets burned. Rebecca got her justice through the legal system. Michael and I got our justice by rebuilding what she tried to destroy. I learned that love sometimes means letting go, even when you know someone is making a mistake. But it also means never giving up, never stopping your vigilance to protect the people you love. Michael learned that family loyalty isn't about choosing sides, it's about choosing truth. He learned that manipulation can look like love, and that the people who truly care about you will tell you hard truths, not just what you want to hear. Most importantly, we both learned that some bonds are stronger than any manipulation, stronger than any betrayal. The bond between a father and son, built on 30 years of love and sacrifice, can survive even the most determined attempt to destroy it. Emma will grow up knowing she's part of something bigger than herself, a family legacy of hard work, integrity, and loyalty. She'll know that her grandfather and father fought for each other, and that family always comes first. Rebecca thought she could use our love against us. She thought she could turn that love into a weapon to destroy us. What she didn't understand is that real love, the love between family, doesn't break. It bends, it stretches, it gets tested, but it doesn't break. In the end, she didn't destroy our family. She just revealed how strong it really was. And that, my friends, is the greatest revenge of all. If you've listened to my story and recognized something familiar in your own life, don't wait like I did. Trust your instincts. Protect your family. And remember, sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to give up on someone, even when they've given up on themselves. Family isn't perfect, but it's worth fighting for.